So, folks, there is a guy named Norman Finkelstein. Okay? Now, Norman Finkelstein is known for being one of the intellectuals to really debunk the Western media narrative around um, what what the situation even is in Palestine, right? Because prior to Norman Finkelstein's academic work, right, there was a book by someone named Joan Peters that essentially stipulated that there was no real Palestinian people. That effectively Joan Peters' assertion was that Palestinians were really just diaspora from many other Arab nations in the area who had been displaced by war, and that was the Palestinian people. And her assertion in this work was essentially that not only are the Palestinian people not like a real people, but that they were essentially formed at the same time as the state of Israel. And so like they had Israelis and Palestinians actually had equal claim to the land, and there could be no settler colonial project because the Palestinian people were actually also settlers of this area, right? And Norman Finkelstein kind of made his career with his review of that book, which is in itself its own book, right? Essentially breaking down the shoddy academic work that was in Joan Peters' book, and laying out like, no, actually the Palestinian people are a cohesive group of people who existed for hundreds of years in that area, right? Just to help you understand this bullshit, Destiny repeated this nonsense yesterday. Yeah, like, the intellectual rot from Joan Peters' work goes deep, right? But Norman Finkelstein is, like, the guy who debunked it, right? So if you want to know more about that, let's see, what is the... Yeah, if you want to read that particular essay/book, look for Image and Reality of the Israel-Palestine Conflict. It was written in 1995, so it's a bit old, but you can definitely find it, and it's a very, very good read. Now, Norman Finkelstein has been kind of like a more controversial character as time has gone on. Mostly because some of his subsequent books have been not as well received as that first one. In particular, there's one called The Holocaust Industry, which was very inflammatorily received. He's basically making the accusation that people representing like the nationalists within like the state of Israel have kind of commodified the Holocaust into like a thing that allows the state of Israel to get away with international crimes and turn it into like a kind of a shield for the Israeli state. Which obviously is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. And also, from what I understand, I haven't read it myself, but a lot of the reviews of it from noted scholars kind of indicate that like the scholarship in his book, The Holocaust Industry, is not exactly great. Is he entirely wrong? No, he is right in parts. The issue is like the backing for some of the points, right, in the book appears to be the case. I see where he's coming from with that, though. Yeah, and like the if I were to kind of characterize the general response to that book, a lot of people were saying he has a point here, but the way he's conveying it is ineffective or isn't backing up some of his points, or like, yeah, some of his arguments need a bit more substance to them. But it's I think he's someone worth listening to on this subject. And I came across he apparently has a YouTube channel. And he has a video that went up yesterday called "Debate: Is Gaza a Concentration Camp?" And I figured since he's been basically covering this, like covering the conflict in West Bank and Gaza for like his entire life, might be worth seeing what he has to say. I'll be waiting for it. Take your time. I just want to say thanks for sharing your content these past few weeks. We really need more voices like you. Marfor, Miriam, I'm glad that my content has helped. I'm honestly the foundational principle of my channel is to try and make the world a better place with whatever I have and however I can, and that includes making it a better place for Palestinians. Yeah, and like Sophie, to be clear, the Holocaust industry, seemed to have some good arguments, but it also seemed to have some very weak arguments. So, like, kind of like a mixed bag there on a very inflammatory topic. So obviously it was very controversial when it released in 2000. So let's take a look at Norman Finkelstein. Debate: Is Gaza a concentration camp?
I think it's fair to characterize Gaza as a concentration camp. And I am the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. My uncle was a child in the camp.
For the record, both of Norman Finkelstein's parents were Holocaust survivors, who survived the Warsaw Ghetto and the subsequent death camps afterwards.
Camps, and my entire family on my mother's side was murdered by the Nazis. I don't think those are, they're not the same thing. I'm not saying that Gaza is, a fun place by any stretch of the imagination necessarily, but I don't think that characterizing it as a concentration camp is fair.
I mean, would characterizing it as a ghetto be fair? Like, I don't know, seems like a fine line to draw, I guess.
And then also your point...
Would you like me to respond to that
Sure.
first, then you'll go second?
Sure.
Okay.
And you can cut this out if you want.
No, you're part of the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Finkel.
So, Baruch Kimmerling was a senior sociologist at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and he was highly respected. He's since passed from the scene prematurely. If you look at his book, Politicide, I'll spell it for your listeners, Politiicide.
Hopefully our listeners can spell that themselves.
Yeah, because he coined the term. That's why I'm spelling it for your listeners. He described Gaza as, quote, the largest concentration camp ever. That was in the world. That's his expression.
Okay.
Okay? Number two, he wrote that in 2003.
Okay.
Before the blockade and before Israel's repeated operation.
I have like the volume at basically max. It's about as good as I can get it.
Of the lawn in Gaza.
I don't like that phrase, but okay.
Yeah. It's a revolting phrase. Yes.
I don't know what show this is from.
And isn't that something that should give one pause? That phrase is constantly repeated. We're mowing the lawn in Gaza.
Can you imagine the phrases that Gaza uses about what they've done?
You realize 1 million of those blades are children.
Okay, I have never heard anyone, and I know a lot of Israelis,
Hamas is using. Sorry, go ahead.
ever use that expression. I don't know anybody who takes any pleasure in killing children. And I don't know that that's the standard.
Well, we know that Hamas massacres.
You got to talk in the
Great
mic.
pleasure.
Here, Perry, you can say, come say.
We know that the Hamas took great pleasure in killing children.
Okay, but I'm not. Yes, we do, but I'm not talking about that now. I'm talking about the Israeli. So I don't want to use that phrase as a standard because I think it's repugnant on both sides. So that's one thing, and then you take, these words like ethnic cleansing and genocide. But I haven't heard you say anything about the horrors of what comes out of Hamas's mouth, or these maybe it's naive to say that some other people who perhaps are not Hamas apologists or sympathizers, who are from the river to the sea, which calls for the very explicit genocide of literally wiping Israel off the map. And
So, to respond to this real quick, from the river to the sea has been used in a lot of different contexts. The majority modern context for from the river to the sea is echoing, I believe, the sentiment put forward by the PLO, which was essentially a call for the return to the 1967 borders. That is like the end of apartheid, the 1967 borders, a two-state solution. That is typically what is meant when people are chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free, right? That's typically what it means. There have been other people who have used it to mean like complete eradication of Jewish people in the area. But yeah. There have also been other uses of the term, like from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, meaning like a one-state solution, like an idyllic version of a one-state solution where like Palestinians and Israelis enjoy equal rights. The end of the apartheid state. So it really matters who is saying it and how they're saying it, because this phrase is loaded and has been used in many different contexts throughout the last like 75 or 80 years.
Jews across the world.
Okay. I know we're going to be pressed for time, and you obviously are committed to the subject enough that you sat down at the table and you want to ask me questions. And I respect that, okay? I had a very close friend in Israel. She was like a high school sweetheart. And I was also close with her daughter. And her daughter is the deputy editor of Haaretz, Tamar Zweigrath, or maybe, yeah, Zweigrath. And on October, she started to hear some of the statements I made, and she was very angry at me. And she said, I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore, and you've lost your moral bearings. And actually, just a week ago, because she was a decent person, I know that. Just a week ago, when I went to Grand Central Station, and I saw those 1,000 Jews inside the station, and about 2,000 more outside the station. I was outside because, silly reason, I don't own a cell phone. And they didn't announce where the demonstration would be until 6 p.m. You had to have a cell phone. So I was stuck at home waiting for my friends to tell me. So I was one of the 2,000 outside. And it was one of the, for me, maybe my chauvinism comes out a little. It was such a proud moment, such a magnificent moment, seeing 1,000 young Jews inside Grand Central Station wearing ceasefire now on the front of the T-shirt and not in my name on the back side of the T-shirt. It was thrilling. And I wanted to send a picture of that to Tamar and write, I guess it's not just me who's lost his moral bearings.
That's not what I'm asking.
Yeah, I know. So now let me get to your question. My parents were very decent people. They were hardworking. My mother was very educated. She went to Warsaw University, studied mathematics, but that was terminated by the war. That was 1937, okay? Having said that, I once asked my mother, just out of curiosity, so Mom, what did you think about the terror bombing of Germany during World War II? They were engaged in terror bombing to kill German civilians in order to get them to rise up. That was the hope. It didn't work, but to get them to rise up against the Germans, okay? The estimates are as many as 800,000 German civilians were killed in the terror bombing. And she just turned...
Which, yeah, not the best thing the United States has ever done. Just throwing that out there.
Turned to me and very flatly said, our feeling was, if we're going to die, we're going to take some of them with us. She didn't discriminate between civilians and combatants, because we were talking about the terror bombing directed at civilians. If we're going to die, we're going to take some of them with us. It was impossible in my home growing up to say any good word about a German or a Pole. But my parents were from Poland, or a Pole. Now with Poles, it was more contempt. You know, the Jews had a contempt for Poles. My mother would say, stupid Pole, stupid Pole. But Germans, it was a raging hatred to the last day of their life, you know? And they were very decent people. Once I brought to my home a friend, Cyrus Wieser, who was half German and half Armenian. It was the first time I ever brought anyone of any German extraction to my home. And my mother wanted to rise to the occasion. And she took him aside at the end and whispered, it's okay that you came. That was the furthest she would go. Now, if you asked what she felt in 1945, because I'm talking about 40 years later, it wouldn't have been okay. So for me, it's expecting something superhuman of the people of Gaza to make anything less than the kind of homicidal statements that my own mother said. If we're going to die, we're going to take some of them with us. I have visited Gaza, not extensively, but I have been there. And, you know, for whatever reason, I was treated decently. I lived in the West Bank. I lived in, if you know the West Bank? Okay, I lived in Beit Sahur, the Christian Palestinian village outside Bethlehem. And I lived in Hebron, right across the street from Fawar refugee camp. I went back every year from 1988 to 1993. Do I walk away with a memory? And I didn't meet Hamas people, because Hamas was already around back then. Do I walk away with a memory of homicidal fascist maniacs wanting to kill me? If I did, I would say it. And people have accused me of many things, but lying is not one of them, you know? And also, errors in my footnotes is not one of them. You can accuse me falsely of selectivity. You can't accuse me of misrepresentation. So that's my answer. You're asking for something which, to my thinking, is superhuman, that they feel about the Jews having been locked up in that concentration camp for 20 years, what my parents felt for the Germans.
It's,
Okay.
wait a second.
Enough. Enough. We have to. Do you want to say? I'm sorry. We
I'm gonna hold
Cut
my
it
tongue.
out.
I
Broadcast.
was gonna say something.
Let
I'm
it-
gonna
let-
hold my tongue.
No,
and
say it and finish. I would accuse you of selectivity, and I hope when we meet again that I can try to.
Fine, go through my book and
I don't
show
need
it.
to say
I have
anything more.
I made a whole thing, but I thought it wasn't because I'm supposed to be like
I mean,
impartial. I didn't want to be.
I would
but
just tell the listeners,
but,
the viewers,
I would like to spar with you on
that
that.
this
Go ahead.
entire conversation,
Yeah.
we have seen Mr. Finkelstein analogize the conditions of Gaza to a concentration camp. Yes, he has an Israeli sociologist who said it too. It is a free and open society in Israel. So yes, you will find such people who will say these sorts of things. But he's stealing a base.
Oh, this is Eli Lake? Man, I didn't recognize him. Damn, okay.
And he's starting with this analogy in order to justify homicidal mass murder. And what I would say to him, even though I am younger and I know that he is a scholar, he's written all these books, is that I wish he would evaluate the fact that he cannot bring himself to simply understand that Hamas are the 21st century Nazis, not Israel.
What? There are actual neo-Nazis around. What are you talking about? Also, Hamas is not at all comparable to the military of Germany in the 1930s. There's like 10, 20,000 of them tops? What are you talking about?
But I make bad analogies.
Well,
You
they
see?
are.
If I
They
invoke-
do what
if
they
I-
do what
if
the
I-
Nazis
if
do,
I-
which is just kill the Jews.
If I invoke the Nazis, it's outrageous.
Well, no,
But when he invokes the Nazis, that's permissible.
well, no. I'm basing it on what they do, as opposed to
Right, and
my
actually,
inner.
Oh god. Oh my god, dude. Yeah, when I do it, it's bad, but when you do it, it's fine. Well, you know, I'm basing it based on what they do. Well, I think maybe Norman Finkelstein was also doing that for the state of Israel and the conditions within the Gaza Strip, but you know, whatever.
Or demons or
actually,
whatever.
That's
I'm
exactly
thinking.
what I did. I based my comment on what they do.
Well,
I think locking
okay.
people in a camp for 20 years, where you can't go in, can't go out, no food,
No
for a full stomach. One half the population suffers from extreme food insecurity, and now, as we speak, exactly.
Oh, okay, yeah. Eli Lake is just terrible. Okay. Very important for POTUS to ignore the Hamas fan club in his own party. These nonsense people are loud, but they're a minority. A ceasefire before Hamas ceases to exist will endanger Israel and further immiserate Palestinians. I don't know, Eli Lake. I think maybe the thousands of children that have died in the Gaza Strip might be, you know, I think maybe the IDF killing those kids might be immiserating the Palestinians more. Just throwing that idea out there.
At this moment, fuel is not being admitted, which means the hospitals collapse and the water supply.
So why doesn't Hamas give them some of their fuel?
You
Yeah,
know,
why? Oh, because they have to kill more Jews?
Okay, Periel, first of all, you don't know that Hamas is not giving the fuel. That's what Israel says. But
if they are, then what's
okay,
the problem?
okay, but
But if they are, what's the what? Yeah, you know, all of those secret Hamas fuel tanks they have that can just power the Gaza Strip indefinitely. I
I am not going by what I know personally. I'm reading the human rights reports. And the human rights reports, as we speak, they're coming out on a daily basis. if the fuel is not admitted, the hospitals will not function and the water will not be drinkable.
Yeah, to let you guys know, like, there's only one operable desalination plant in the Gaza Strip. Last I heard, and it relies on fuel in order to run the generators to actually get drinkable water. Now that Israel turned off the water. Now, in some of the places, Israel claims it's turned back the water on. However, they've deliberately bombed the infrastructure that actually delivers that water to Palestinians. So, like, turning the water back on in that case doesn't really do much. Additionally, turning the water back on doesn't do much if you don't have pumps on the other side that pump the water into the areas Palestinians
We're
need it.
doing this together, chat.
Kyryu, thank you for gifting a tier 1 sub. I appreciate that.
In Gaza, okay? That's what the human rights organizations are saying.
Okay.
It's not-
We're repeating.
To be clear, Karazane, I think Eli Lake is talking about, like, the squad, like the political figures within the Democratic Party are a minority. But that's increasingly changing as well due to the fact that 66% of Americans want a ceasefire, right? Like, Dick Durbin the other day. Dick Durbin, one of the most establishment Democrats, called for a ceasefire yesterday. Like, the tides are turning here.
It's not about, at this moment, it's not about Hamas. It's very convenient, and I'm not saying you're doing it on purpose.
She does do it on purpose.
No, I'm not saying. It's very convenient
I gotta make a point.
to home in on Gaza. I'm home in on Hamas. I'm talking about the 2.3 million people. 2% of the food that they normally get, which means normally it's extreme food, and 2% is being admitted. Water is drying up. Hospitals are becoming dysfunctional.
Again, the hospitals, last I heard, also did not have painkillers for surgery. They did not have enough antibiotics. And water was literally so scarce, and I believe this is still the case, that medical workers have been drinking saline bags for water, because that's, like, the last source of, like, clean water available to them.
Now that, to me, is a murder plan. You may not like to hear it.
Okay, sir.
But
sir.
de facto, it's a murder plan. It's a death
Professor
sentence for the people of Gaza.
I'll say, and then we'll finish. First of all, I've said this before, I'm not ready to sign on the dotted line for what Israel is going to do. I am giving them the benefit of the doubt, and I'll predict here today.
And this clip went up yesterday, so, like, what Israel is going to do? What about what Israel has already done? You know, we're nearing 10,000 people having been killed, with like 3,000 or 4,000 of those people being children. 3,000 or 4,000, almost half of all of the people that have been killed so far in the Gaza Strip are children. I just read around 20,000 people are trapped under rubble. I mean, that doesn't surprise me. Like, how are you going to get big pieces of rubble off of people that are trapped underneath of it? Like, if you don't have fuel to, like, run, like, construction equipment and stuff, like, how? You know, what do you do? Do people not realize that you need water to live? Honestly, they know it. They just don't care if these people live. That's the issue, right?
That Israel is not going to starve Gazans to death. But if they do, I will say Finklestein was right, I was wrong, and this is...
I'm sure that will be great comfort to all of the dead people in Gaza. That you're saying, I was wrong, Finklestein was right. I'm sure that's going to be a lot of comfort to the dead people in Gaza.
This is a shame that the Jewish people committed. I don't believe that's going to happen. I wonder if you really think it's going to happen. But there's a lot of bluster and bluffing and hard fucking nose actions that people take in wartime. I want to say the following about.
That's a really convenient thing to say about doing war crimes that in any just society would be tried in The Hague. Here are some quotes from Human Rights Watch. A general lack of assistive devices in Gaza, such as wheelchairs, prostheses, crutches, and hearing aids, a result primarily of restrictions linked to Israel's unlawful 16-year closure of Gaza, is also affecting people's ability to flee. People who have visual, hearing, developmental, or intellectual disabilities may not hear, know, or understand about what is happening. Yeah. Doesn't surprise me.
About the Nazis. Conclusory.
Oh, shit. Okay. Doctors Without Borders. Just real quick here. This is Doctors Without Borders here.
At least 690,000 Gazans shelter in 149 UN facilities, all internally displaced. Those that could moved south, away from the most intense bombardment and fighting in northern Gaza. Here in Khan Yunis, where many have sought refuge, conditions are deteriorating rapidly. Lack of clean water is one of the biggest challenges.
We have almost no water. The water we get is salty and makes us sick. We can't cope with this. We suffer from diseases, diarrhea, fever due to a bacteria. We are all sick, not just the children.
Many people are resorting to unsafe sources of water, like, for example, we heard seawater, we heard well water, untreated water, and that is extremely risky because with that comes waterborne diseases among children, among adults.
Humanitarian supplies are now trickling in through the Rafah crossing, but nowhere near pre-war levels. Many are reliant on bottled water, as much of Gaza's water infrastructure has been damaged.
Before the 7th of October, an average of 500 trucks a day were crossing into Gaza with essential supplies. Since the 7th of October, only 217 trucks have entered in total. To sustain the humanitarian response on the scale needed, we need hundreds of trucks to enter Gaza every day.
The pressure for some kind of pause or ceasefire is growing. On Wednesday, US President Joe Biden hinted that he wanted one too. A pause might help boost the delivery of water and other crucial supplies, but if it's only temporary, the crisis will soon return. Simon McGregor-Wood.
None of this story was about Doctors Without Borders saying 20,000 wounded are trapped in Gaza. That upsets me for having used our time for that, but I don't doubt it, but I would need more of a citation on this.
Comparing things to things is a
It's okay,
tool.
Somniostatic.
It's a strategy of advocacy.
Really emphasizing the water crisis was also useful, so I appreciate that.
To compare something to the Nazis is a very powerful way to win an argument. All I would say is that if you were to compare factually what you've described as a concentration camp in Gaza, and then I were to list factually to somebody who never heard the word concentration camp, what it meant to be a concentration camp in Germany, they would never.
I also, just real quick, just to interject here, I hate the idea that is being put forward in this conversation that the Nazis invented concentration camps. They didn't. They didn't. Concentration camps predate World War II. Okay? The United States used them in the Philippines. During the scramble for Africa, there were concentration camps throughout Africa. Like, there is you can have concentration camps without Nazis. It's historically possible to do. Yeah, the camps for the Japanese in America as well. Another American example.
never think of using the same word to describe them both.
No, with all
You can find some, a concentration camp implies mass murder.
No, it doesn't. The death camps of World War II certainly had that. But you could also have concentration camps that weren't predicated on eradicating the people who lived inside them.
It's a death camp.
Okay, but that's what I understand. There's war camps. There's war camps and death camps.
Bergen-Belsen was a concentration camp.
But you know as well as I do that in the general public doesn't make that distinction.
Well, you know as well as I, the general public doesn't make that distinction. Well, maybe the general public should. Maybe the general public should develop that into their vocabulary.
These, what we call them internment camps, they were concentration camps.
Yes, but that people don't make that fine distinction in everyday life. And I don't know the details of the work camps, but when you tell people it's a concentration camp, I believe you know this. You know how ignorant people are. They assume you're comparing it to the worst of Germany.
I'm quoting Baruch Kimmerling.
All right. Well, that's fine. All right.
Yeah, you found one.
Actually, you want a second?
You have another. You got another
human
rights report. The Gaza Ministry of Health, because they call it that too.
I would suspect that you would know Amira Haas.
Yeah, I do know Amira Haas.
Okay, and Amira Haas's parents were in the camps in World War II,
Okay.
and she once had to wrestle with that question. And if you're interested, since you said you want to do research after, just Google Amira Haas concentration camp, Gaza. She lived there, to her eternal credit. She lived there, and she wrote a book, Drinking. Okay.
I am interested, but of course, everybody can pick somebody esteemed who agrees with them. So it's not an evidence.
Yeah, but it's not like you're pulling.
The question is
It's not something like your
argument.
But like the thing is, you don't even have to pick someone who's esteemed, right? Like, it's just a matter of historical record that concentration camps have existed prior to World War II. This isn't new information, and it's been reported on widely. If you guys want examples of concentration camps, read up on the unspeakably awful things that the American military did in the Philippines. You can read up on the different things that happened in under King Leopold in the Belgian Congo. Again, I would recommend King Leopold's Ghost, one of the best historical nonfiction books I've ever read in my life. Very, very good. If you want information on this stuff. Yeah, the British used them in the Boer War. Yeah, there's a lot of examples you can use about this. This isn't a controversial take that Norman Finklestein has here.
Fine, that's why I said Google it, because Amira, I don't always agree with her, but number one, Amira is a stickler for facts like myself, and she's a...
Whether or not the situation is like Nazi Germany, just fucking do something to end the war crimes.
Yeah, right? Like, it is very telling that they keep getting caught up on that, right? Like, their focus isn't the war crime. Their focus is whether or not you should compare it to the Nazis.
Turning away from the pale and downtrodden and the words they say which we won't understand. No more turning away, chat. BWA means facing the truth.
True. Kyrie, thank you for gifting a sub to QETP, and Paladin Lost, thank you for the $20 dono. That is incredibly generous of you. Thank you so, so much. What's the worst death toll in concentration camps in history? Honestly, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm going to guess it is a lot.
A political person.
All right.
And if you read her statements since October 7th, in general, they've been excellent.
All right.
They've been excellent. And she was careful to say, I have friends who've looked into it. There were significant atrocities that occurred on October 7th. I defer to her judgment. I know she's not a propagandist. but she was also very careful not to blame the people of Gaza for what happened.
Okay, Professor, thank you very, very much.
Yeah. Honestly, I think Norman Finkelstein did very well in that debate. I wish it had been given more airtime, frankly. But yeah, honestly, more people need to read up on the Filipino genocide during the Philippine-American War. It's pretty disgusting. There's a longer version that's just Norman and Eli. I think we got the gist of it here. People need to learn about Darfur, including myself. Shit is still happening. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna take a breath. And I just have one more clip to show you guys. This clip has been making the rounds. It's also of Norman Finkelstein. And it's from a Q&A he did years and years ago, right? And where a student asked him about this. So let's just see what he has to say. It's about 3 minutes long.
Hi. During your speech, you made a lot of references to Jewish people as well as certain people in your audience, not Jewish people in general, but certain people, especially in your audience, to Nazis. Now, that is extremely offensive when certain people are German. And they're also extremely offensive to people who've actually suffered under Nazi rule.
I don't respect that anymore. I really don't. I don't like and I don't respect the crocodile tears to the crocodile tears. No. I'm sorry, folks. Allow me to finish and allow me to finish. Listen, sir. Allow me to finish. Allow me to finish. Sir. I don't like to play before an audience the Holocaust card. But since now I feel compelled to. My late father was in Auschwitz. My late mother, please shut up. My late father was in Auschwitz. My late mother was in Majdanek concentration camp. Every single member of my family on my father's side,
the Jews did not take arms against the Germans.
My late father was in Auschwitz concentration camp. My late mother was in Majdanek concentration camp. Every single member of my family on both sides was exterminated. Both of my parents were in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And it's precisely and exactly because of the lessons my parents taught me and my two siblings that I will not be silent when Israel commits its crimes against the Palestinians. And I consider nothing more despicable than to use their suffering and their martyrdom to try to justify the torture, the brutalization, the demolition of homes that Israel daily commits against the Palestinians. So I refuse any longer to be intimidated or browbeaten by the tears. If you had any heart in you, you would be crying for the Palestinians, not for what's being done. What?
Could I just calm the audience down?
Dude comes up. Can I just calm the audience down for a minute? And like, yeah, you can. Go for it.
I've never been in a crowd like this. They're nuts.
But dude has been his entire life fighting for the rights of Palestinians, and I have a massive amount of respect for him, even if some of his books might not hold up under like the academic scrutiny of a bunch of people. I you know, like some of his books very controversial. Some of the reception characterizes them as being like, you know, not fully supported, but I think the sentiment behind his life's work is honorable and good. And, you know, his fight for the Palestinians, just. Can I get a link to that? Yeah. There you go. Remember that was years ago, the hate he must have received? Yeah, I don't know when that was. That's probably early 2000s by the look of it. I feel like the job of a public intellectual is different from that of an academic anyway. I mean, I think he generally is an academic, you know? He's come a long way, yeah. So Norman Finklestein, as far as I know, pretty honorable man.